People who have been on the deep web, what's the scariest thing you found? I own a fairly rare car that had a rare error code. I looked it up on Google and there was only one other person on the car maker's forum that had the same error. And this guy took months and months going back and forth between car shops and the forum thread to try to get the issue fixed. Everyone on the forum was pitching in to try to help him. So I kept going through this long forum thread to try to figure out if he ever fixed it. And suddenly there are no more replies from the guy. Everyone was scratching their heads for a while. We thought he had maybe gotten the issue fixed and didn't bother to update us on it. Then one day, a news article popped up about a really rich guy who died in a Thai jail cell. And then we connected the two stories and they matched up. The same make and model of the car in the news article matched up with his car. And they were both claiming to be in Thailand at the time. So what happened was that same guy who was still talking on the forums got raided by the Thai police around the same time he stopped replying to the forum. Turns out that he was running one of the biggest dark web marketplaces where drones were being sold and exchanged. It had something like $1 million in revenue per day and he was hiding out in Thailand while living in luxury. They found him in his jail cell a few days later. They claim he died of suicide. I don't frequent it a lot, but once I accidentally left my browser in full screen and a stranger in a chat room asked me if my curved monitor was nice, freaked me out a bit.
Not really a dark web user, but I got doxxed by a Nena's group on the dark web and ended up having to use the dark web to find the websites that had my information. Department of Homeland Security and the FBI showed up on my doorstep because they were threatening to send me letter bombs and send people to abduct and rep me. It was scary shit. They all fell off the face of the earth recently, so I'm just hoping the feds got to them.
So I had ordered many times on the dark web, but one day I decided to place a rather large order of XT pills from Europe to the USA. I had a terrible feeling in my gut after the order was placed and actually had some serious food poisoning or something that night, lol. Cut to weeks later, I ended up getting arrested for the pills and entered the worst time of my entire life. I stumbled on an animal tort page, and uninstalled Tor just a few seconds later, but the mental scarring is for life. I remember a long time ago there was a guy online that was trying to buy large quantities of bed bugs. When questioned why he wanted them, he basically said that he wanted to try to breed them to be resistant to normal methods of killing them while simultaneously breeding in a weakness that only he knew. This way he could release them in people's houses and then force them to pay him to get rid of the bed bugs since no one else would be able to key them.
My own password. Found a channel that had a link to a website that when you put in an email address, would show you the password in plain text if that email address had been pawned. Typed in one of my old, now closed, emails, and there it was. Just a blank page with my email address and password on it, sitting right there for anybody to find.
A friend of mine claims he was snooping around where he didn't belong, black market forums and hacking forums, when someone private messaged him basically saying, "I've looked into you because I see you in here a lot and I know you're not here to buy or use the services because you're just a kid. I don't mind, but others will, and you haven't protected yourself well enough to be here. Get off if you know what's good for you." Well, when I visited, I mostly visited the hacking/cybersecurity part. Interesting to see how people go about hacking various things, and really educational. Yes, there are people buying and selling 0 days, etc., but it's mostly social engineering. Anyway, the scariest was a hack advertising a service where he was willing to upload cheap ore onto someone's computer and report him to the police as a form of taking someone out. Well, Actually, the scariest part was discovering that there were at least 2 people in the chat room that I was in discussing about kernel security who had used that service. I decided to stick to more regular forums afterward. Someone asked this question a while ago. One single reply stood out to me. They were a blogger for dark web stuff and actually met the king of the Do Empire. I forgot the guy's name, he was like a 22-year-old Australian or something. Anywho, she said, the scariest thing about him wasn't his appearance, it's how absolutely normal he looked. This was a kid who single-handedly ran the biggest underground kid poor operation and he looked like a regular Starbucks customer. I paraphrased. But this should sound familiar to a bunch of you. IRC. The case was interesting because the kid argued that he himself never actually aimed or filmed any children being aimed, and never solely touched or solely filmed any child himself. While randomly clicking around Tor one night, I found a site with a riddle and a text box to enter an answer. After figuring it out, it took me to another page that had a message to decode and another text box. Basically every page was a puzzle and got harder every time. I was 15 and not very smart with those kinds of things, so I found a forum where other people had discovered the site and were talking about it. Apparently on the final page it just displayed date and a quote from Alice in Wonderland. I believe it was just a site made to be some sort of entertainment for very experienced decoders and programmers, but there was speculation that it was a hacker recruiting site similar to Cicada 3301. Either way, it creeped me out a lot. A hitman site. No idea if it was a scam. I'd be willing to bet they just took the money and ran, but I noped out quickly anyway. It was like you pay them the equivalent of $5,000 up front in Bitcoin and they kill someone of your choosing and cover it up and you pay the rest later. Scary as fuck. I used to take pictures of drones for a local Silk Road dealer. I was over at his house once and he was testing out some onion links and he suddenly said, "Oh my god, look at this." It was a site where a guy in America would fuck the corpses of the animals and post his experiences with graphic pictures and descriptions. If you scrolled a bit further you saw he moved on to humans. I walked away from the computer pretty quickly. It's impossible to tell which of these were scams or not because I never tried to buy anything, but here are a few things I saw years ago. Tons of weapons. Even more droves. Human trafficking, literally said BA this woman for dollars worth of Bitcoin. Child trafficking, same as above but it was for children and more expensive if I recall. Hitman services. Acid attack services. Tons of websites selling credit card info, PayPal info, and bank details. One of the more interesting ones that I actually wanted to try was a forum dedicated to sharing insider trading tips. This way you could make investments that wouldn't be obvious insider trading because you wouldn't be linked to the company involved. However, part of the registration process was that you had to submit a tip that turned out correct. I don't know how real it was, but I was asking for trouble roaming around random sites. I stumbled on a discussion about how to hide that you have AIDS in order to hook up with people and spread it to them. A friend of mine went digging and found a video of someone cooting a face from someone off his head and using it as a mask. Those are the type of videos that make me sick as hell. I think this was in 2012 or whenever the Silk Road was at its peak. A friend had told me he ordered some MDM off of it and actually received the package in the mail. I had him show me how he used Tor and we spent the better part of an afternoon marveling at all the stuff you could buy. Eventually, we came across someone who was selling children. The offer was you would list the characteristics of the chai you want, and depending on the difficulty of acquiring that type of chai, pay somewhere around 5-50K and have the child sent to you. There were pictures of ones he had, in stock, where they were mostly neared in a dirty room, or he could go find the certain one you wanted and take it. We turned off the computer and didn't get back on for a few days. I wish I had called the police, but we were stupid kids and scared of getting in trouble for my buddy's droves. When I was about 12 to 13, I used to browse through Tor all night and just scroll through whatever my naive ass could find. Aside from the usual gore and CIP that was floating around, I saw this one page that still haunts me now. This guy ran an animal sanctuary out in Colorado with a bunch of different exotic animals. He would essentially rent them out to people who were into bestiality. Some of those animals looked so miserable, malnourished, and chained up in the photos. I didn't even know what to do with that info at that age and just remember having nightmares about those animals. There was this deep forum I somehow stumbled upon. It had extremely fucked up people. By fucked up I mean psychologically. There were people with suicidal tendencies. There were people telling them that nothing matters and suggesting different ways to suicide. There was this section dedicated to seducing family members, cest. I remember reading a dude's post saying that he's having feelings for his real sister. He tried a lot but she rejected him, calling him crazy. He led his sister. He then committed suicide because he couldn't take it. This made it to the news and gave me shudders. I was incognito so had no history. I couldn't find that site again after that the way I did before. Edit, the news didn't mention the website. Don't know if they know it or not. I made the connection by his post. He also made one last post before suicide, which said something like, led my sister by accident. Guess I'll die too. He said he had an older brother living in a different country and the news said that as well. Can be a coincidence but chances are extremely low. A lot of what I found was repositories of semi-sketchy information. Like various, extremely specific ways of human to tour, and signs of when to stop so the person doesn't extremely detailed lists of materials to buy to create bombs, and how to wire them up for remote, cell phone, detonation, and just odd, Zool, books. Each was kind of its own topic/repository, like one for to tour, one for explosives, one for sex. I didn't venture into any of the sites on the dark web. I can find what I need on the regular web. One interesting, not really scary, site I found was Found MacBook Pros of that year. The website claimed to have a couple hundred of them for like $300 per EA. They had a picture showing like 5 to 6 powered up, with a pile of them behind. Likely a scam, but you never know. Another interesting one was someone was selling 2 gloss, with their serial numbers removed, for like $2,000. Oh, and people advertised to be hit and semi-regularly. Some specialized in highly influential people, charging $50,000 up front and $50,000 after. I didn't really do much on there, so I'd take the legitimacy of all of those services with a grain of salt. My time on the deep web was exploratory and just out of curiosity. My buddy, seriously my buddy, and not me, can attest to buying droves off of the dark web though. He'd buy pills cheap on there, and then sell them on his college campus for huge profits lol. When I was at school in Colorado we would buy Nax, EC Tossie, and whatever else off the deep web all the time, but once we ran into a vendor sell-in, people without arms and legs. I'm guessing they were meant to be slaves, but who knows if that's all they were being used for. I helped out with some of the 4chan raids to help shut down some of those poor sites. But man, you can't unsee that. That's some messed up crap, glad it's gone now. Edit, due to the positive response, I've decided to tell my story. I've never told anyone, to save 3 special individuals who will always have a special place cut out for them in my heart. Tid a bit of information: one of my closest friends lost his 12-year-old sister to a drunk driver, and my friend watched her get hit. I don't curse often, but if you drink and drive, fuck you. With that said, on with the story. A while ago, just before the 4chan raid started up, I had recently gotten ahem better than most people with computers. It wasn't that impressive. I was still a script kiddie, novice hacker who uses other people's programs, but was beginning to spread my own wings and write my own programs. One day, while I dived deeper than normal, someone on a sketchy forum posted a link. I thought, what the hell, I'm VM'd, it'll be fine. And I was right, and wrong. I just remember looking into that girl's eyes and seeing a face that reminded me more of the face of my friend's, the sister, than of a young girl. She was no more than 10, tops. I shut my computer off and just cried. The anxiety I had long past left crept back into my daily life. I went from being able to actively engage with young kids around that age to just seeing that girl's face every time I saw someone in their age range. Since the death of my friend's sister, a voice always asked me, why were you not there to stop her? And when I heard that same voice ask the question, why aren't you doing anything? I snapped. I stopped volunteering, started skipping class, stopped attending certain extracurricular activities, and spent 8 to 10 hours a day learning anything and everything I could about coding, hacking, and most importantly, doozing. I went to work to get that website shut down. I don't think I actually did much. After every attempt to shut it down, I'd force myself to follow that link. And it always worked. That face greeted me time and time again. This cycle repeated itself for the most destructive month, or 2, can't remember, of my life. My physical and mental health deteriorated significantly in this time period, and my grades stooped to their lowest ever. Then, just as I began to completely shut down, the one person who knew of my troubles, showed me a familiar website I used to browse frequently. Good old 4chan. I got in contact with some people who were far more skilled than I ever was with hacking and the like. At this point, the raids were starting up in full force. I showed the website and my doozing program to a fellow, who will remain nameless, and he made major improvements to my program, and after only a couple days, he'd done what I'd worked for a long time to do. For the first time, instead of being greeted with my nightmares, I was greeted with a white screen with the words, "Tor failed to connect," plastered onto it. To this day, if you launch my computer, the only shortcut will have the words Project Charlotte plasters beneath it. I didn't save you, I didn't save her, but god damn it, I did my best, and maybe my best was just enough to slightly lower the burden on that young girl's shoulders. Subscribe so you don't miss the next videos.